Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Bully Whispers, formerly Soprano Street, and we are here today to evaluate Christopher Moltisanti. We see from the beginning of the series that Christopher is very concerned with his own personal character arc.
Where's my arc, Paulie?
So I decided to have a little fun with it and do a somewhat Kurt Vonnegut-style character evaluation, asserting that Chris was right. He, in fact, had no arc. We will take a look at his demeanor and personality throughout the series, as well as his pursuits of his goals and significant events that occurred along the way. In doing so, we will see he didn't change as a person, he didn't accomplish anything of significance in relation to his character arc, and that all of the seemingly notable events in his life were actually insignificant. Before we really dig in, I'd like to take a second to address Chris's heroin use. The first time we really see him with heroin specifically is in Italy, and while he may have seen this zombie-looking guy's messed up arm and decided to shoot heroin out of nowhere, he does have a genetic predisposition for addiction, at least on his mom's side, and since we see him getting into harder drugs from the beginning, I'm considering his addiction to be a character trait that continues throughout the show rather than some sort of event. So, who is Christopher Moltisanti to start the series? I will be using the entirety of the first season in answering that question, since most shows don't have their characters exactly defined to start, and spend the first season fleshing out those characters and defining their roles. This is especially evident in The Sopranos with Adriana, who isn't even listed in the credits as Adriana for the pilot episode, she's listed only as hostess. We see in season 1 that Chris wants to be a gangster.
There was a time in my life when being with the Tony Soprano crew was all I ever dreamed of.
But it's important to note here that what he really wants is the image in his head of what being a gangster was like. This is demonstrated very early on when he kills Emil in a bid to move up, but it didn't work out as planned.
I killed that fucking Emil Cola on nothing. I don't even move up a notch.
Nor was it as easy as he expected it to be.
All I got is nightmares.
We also see in this conversation that his interest in the movie business is genuine, since he is writing a script, and not just a threat he used to get under Tony's skin.
She said I could sell my life story, make fucking millions. I didn't do that. I stuck it out with you. I'll fucking kill you. What are you gonna do, go Henry Hill on me now?
Lastly, we see that despite being upset for a couple reasons, including Tony's lack of an immediate response to Brendan Fallone's death and the Yo-Yo Mendez situation, the season ends with things starting to look up as he's unleashed to avenge Brendan's death and has reason to believe things will get better. So at the end of season 1, we see Chris as Tony's driver, who feels underappreciated and disillusioned, but with reason to believe there are better days ahead. He shows a desire to move up in the mob, although the associated perception is just as important, as well as an interest in the movie business, and one other interest which will come into focus during season 2, family. Adriana is really cemented as Chris's love interest and not just a girlfriend in season 2 when he proposes to her. However, his real motives are hinted at in a conversation with Matthew Bevilacqua and Sean Gismonti during a robbery.
She loves me and these are her childbearing years.
And the reason behind that motive is revealed later in the series.
You don't get it, Adriana. I don't have a son. The Moltisanti name ends. That's it.
This is something he would have been aware of from a very young age. So the desire to have a son had always been there. It wasn't an example of any character evolution. He had just chosen his mate. And as of this point, they weren't married, nor did they have kids. Christopher also got his first real taste of the movie business through his cousin Greg's fiancée Amy in D-Girl. He is invigorated by his visit to a movie set and his discussions with Jon Favreau, but quickly he becomes disillusioned when Amy ignores him after a one-night stand and he finds out they stole one of his stories. Chris's increased interest in movies doesn't go unnoticed by Tony, who is angered by the distraction and forces Chris to make a choice.
Exactly 10 minutes I'm going to look up. If you're not here, I'm going to assume that you went to look for whatever the fuck it is that's calling you out there. And that I will never see you again.
Chris chooses the mob, and the movies are put aside for now. Despite this turbulence, the season ends with Christopher finding out that he's going to be made, giving him hope for a better tomorrow. But for the purposes of this discussion, it hasn't actually happened yet, so no real change on that front. Before moving on to season 3, I think it's important to address Chris's getting shot and supposedly seeing his father in hell, since this would seem to be a very significant event in a character's arc. But was it? First off, we don't actually know if he saw what he thought he saw. But assuming he did, the fact that he was supposedly going to hell didn't seem to bother him, as evidenced by the fact that he didn't change his lifestyle. Since the 3 o'clock message was unintelligible and neither his demeanor nor lifestyle changed, this event had no impact on his character arc. It was just something that happened. Moving into Season 3, Chris is finally made, but it's not exactly what he thought it would be.
This being made ain't working out the way I thought it would. A lot of responsibilities.
This feeling is further compounded when Jackie Jr., who he already feels undervalued relative to,
I didn't say that.
What else did you say? That the life's good enough for me, but not for little Lord Fuckpants?
robs the card game, and Tony doesn't allow him to go after Jackie immediately. He is again disillusioned as the reality of being made is not only harder than he thought, but it also didn't seem to carry the respect he thought it should, since it seemed Jackie was going to get away with it. However, in the end, Chris got what he wanted in regards to Jackie Jr., although he didn't maintain a good image in the process, and was even arrested at the subsequent funeral. While this may seem bad, remember in Season 1 he was very upset at the lack of attention he received during the first police roundup, and since he got out quickly on bail, maybe this gangster thing is looking up. Unfortunately, at the beginning of Season 4, he is right back to feeling underappreciated after being put back in the role of Tony's driver.
I'm driving again all of a sudden.
So what, I gotta explain to you why I want you with me this week?
Although there is a reason for this, and we will get back to that in a bit. He is also disillusioned when he finds out Adriana can't have kids, and although he now realizes that he loves her, he also knows that she can't fulfill his true wish.
You said you'd still love me.
That doesn't mean I'll fucking marry you.
Now, while this may be a very emotional and compelling moment, it makes no real significant change in his arc. He still desires a son primarily, and he isn't any closer to or further away from that goal. He just realizes Adriana isn't a viable method of achieving it. However, he does seem to be moving closer to his mafia goals when Tony tells him that he is the future of the family and subsequently makes him acting capo. Unfortunately, this makes it increasingly difficult to fly under the radar with his addiction, and soon thereafter it is brought to everyone's attention when an intervention is staged. At this intervention, he lost a tremendous amount of respect from the guys, received a vicious beatdown, and a mandatory trip to rehab. So while he may have been going up in rank, he was going down in image, making this somewhat of a wash in that regard. However, he emerges from rehab temporarily sober and with reason to believe that there are better days ahead. Before moving on to Season 5, I'd like to take a second to address the killing of Detective Haydu, as it seems like getting revenge on your father's killer would be significant in a character's arc, but was it? Neither us as the audience nor Chris as the character knows if Haydu actually did it, and even Chris acknowledges this, saying that it wouldn't matter. So this wasn't avenging his father, nor did it change his actions or demeanor moving forward. It was just something he did. Moving into Season 5, Tony B is released from prison, and Chris is feeling underappreciated as he seems to have gained Tony Soprano's favor. However, he does save Chris's life after Tony Soprano and Adriana were in a car crash and Christopher sought revenge. This crash left Christopher incredibly disillusioned with both Tony and Adriana, and even though nothing happened, he is still saddled with the stigma of it.
What do you care what people think? You know the truth.
I gotta live in the world. And now I look like Joe Jerkoff.
So once again, while he may be technically rising in the mafia, it is not reflecting the image which he was truly after. To make things worse, he later finds out Aid was a snitch, which may seem like a big deal, but really isn't in the context of this evaluation. Not only were they not married or have kids, so she didn't impact his life in that way, but she also didn't have the potential for kids, and after snitching, Chris wouldn't have even wanted her as a wife, so there wasn't even the potential for that impact in the future. Had he gone with Aid, his arc would have changed, but he stayed on the same path. After it was all said and done, she had very little impact on him as a person, since he stayed the same. She had no impact on his family goals, as she was neither a wife or a mother, nor did her presence prevent Chris from hooking up with any others, and she had only a minimal impact on his movie pursuits through her support. She was just something he did. To be fair, I do have to point out that Season 5 was the only season besides the last to end without Christopher having hope for a better tomorrow. However, that hope presents itself in the first part of Season 6, which I will be pretty much treating as one season. Christopher finds himself married with a kid on the way, and his movie dreams are starting to come to fruition. Between meeting JT the writer through AA and lining up mob investors, he finally had everything in place to produce the movie Cleaver. This would prove to be the only real accomplishment in relationship to his goals that we see from him, and could have prompted an actual character development had he chosen to go the Little Carmine route and semi-retire down to Florida. Not only that, but his mob path seemed to be looking up since he had officially been made capo in between seasons 5 and 6. However, he still feels underappreciated as Bobby Bacala is getting closer to Tony and taking his spot. Even more so, he feels disrespected when he mistakes some of Polly Walnut's wisecracks as insults while they were having a drink, causing him to storm off and go to JT's house for support. When JT turns his back on Christopher due to his lifestyle, he shoots JT, killing his own future movie prospects as well. His mafia prospects, or any other for that matter, are ended shortly thereafter when Chris is driving Tony and they crash, following which Tony suffocates him. So, let's evaluate his character. While it can be argued that the birth of his child is significant and should count for something, in this instance, it doesn't. First off, he wanted a son, but even if that wasn't an issue, he wasn't around long enough afterwards for it to impact his character. We get a brief glimpse into how much he loved her, but again, it made no substantive impact on his personality, and he moved forward, albeit briefly, in his normal manner. Having a daughter was just another thing he did. He started out as Tony's driver, committing murder for no real reason, and he ended as Tony's driver, who was murdering people for no real reason. In between, he remained continuously disillusioned, constantly feeling underappreciated despite the high level of preferential treatment he received, and any progress he made towards his mob goals was evened out by a lack of accompanying respect he thought he deserved. His two main achievements, his kid and his movie, both happened too late to have any real effect on him, rendering them both, essentially, just things he did. He remains the same character throughout the series, and the only real difference in between the beginning and the end is that when he was driving Tony in the middle of the series, he wasn't wearing a hat. Anyways, due to inflation, $18.42 a pound. Well, thanks for watching another episode here on Bully Whispers. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.